Hi, I'm Steve Scott, founder of Max International. And today I have the honor, and I mean honor, of interviewing two members of our medical advisory board. Now, our medical advisory board is not paid. They have utilized the products, they have utilized products with their patients, and they have seen the results. And one is Dr. Don Colbert, New York Times best-selling author of over 40 books. Tens of millions of people have seen him on TV. He's been on Fox. He's been on just about every kind of program you could imagine. He is as focused on prevention as he is on treatment. He has told me that he would rather keep people from going to the hospital and getting sick than treating them once they're sick. The second doctor that I'm with, his name is Dr. Douglas Harrington. He was on the Stanford Heart Transplant team. He is board certified in pathology and hematology. He is currently the CEO of a company that I'm excited about because they have pioneered a breakthrough way to tell the true risk that a person has for heart attack and stroke, that looks at a lot of biomarkers that normally haven't been looked at, and they're taking that test to the world. And it's going to save a lot of lives. Dr. Colbert, Dr. Harrington, thank you so much. I can't even begin to tell you how grateful I am for everything you've done in your life that led up to here, for what you have contributed in this past year to us, and just the difference that you men are making in the lives of so many, and for us, the lives right now of hundreds of thousands and someday tens of millions that are benefiting from what you all are bringing to our efforts. So
well,
thank
Steve,
you very
I
much.
Thank you, and for me, I count it an honor to be part of the Max team.
Thank you.
And likewise, not only is it an honor, it's a lot of fun.
Good. We love fun. Fun
That's
keeps us
right.
young, and
Yeah.
at our age, we got to do something, right?
That's right. We have the energy to enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's start with glutathione in general, and Don, why don't we start with you? Just tell me why glutathione is so important, what your experience has been with glutathione over the years.
Well, first of all, glutathione was actually discovered in 1888 by a French scientist, D. Ray Pelhade, but it wasn't until the 1970s that we truly discovered the detoxification abilities or capabilities of glutathione. But the thing that excites me most about glutathione is its anti-inflammatory properties. You see, glutathione is this molecule that is an intracellular antioxidant that is the master antioxidant in the whole body, and it's intracellular. And what it does, it quenches free radical reactions, I mean pretty much all free radical reactions. It recycles other antioxidants, including itself, and it also, what it does, it suppresses those inflammatory mediators and quenches the free radical reactions and detoxifies chemical solvents, heavy metals. So you're getting this tremendous benefit from one single antioxidant. But not just that. I mean, that alone would just amaze most people, most doctors, most individuals. But also, we have its energy effects, because realize energy comes from the mitochondria of the cell. They're the energy storehouses in which makes ATP our energy currency. But the very process of breathing oxygen, exercising, causes tremendous amounts of oxidative stress in the body, and especially in the mitochondria. And it produces hydrogen peroxide, singlet oxygen, oxidative free radicals that actually damage the mitochondria. And by damaging the mitochondria, it affects its ability to produce energy. So people start to get fatigued, but not only that, it starts to produce actually more free radicals that are not quenched, more damage. And that process goes on and on until the mitochondria become dysfunctional. And then it simply can't exert the energy in that cell it needs in order to accomplish all the functions of the cell. And so realize organs such as the heart, those muscles, that one cell may have 2,500 mitochondria, but just think if the majority are dysfunctional, working at only 50% capacity, just think how that heart's going to get weaker, ejection fraction get weaker. The same with the kidneys, the same with the liver, the same with the lungs, same with the brain. But the brain is even more concerning because there's more oxidative stress in the brain than any other organ because it takes up more oxygen than any other organ, and there's more fatty membranes in the brain, which causes more oxidative peroxidation, free radical stress in the brain.
Wow. Doug?
Well, I've been fascinated for years about the claims that companies make about antioxidants. And one of the things that's always intrigued me is the thought that you could take certain substances and that, like glutathione orally, and that it would actually have action. And the truth is that it's broken down in the GI tract. And the beauty of what compounds like Celgevity do, and ribosine in particular, is that it helps the body produce this important substance, glutathione, that allows it to take the effects that Don just talked about from the body by mitigating the inflammation. And it does so by combining one of the compounds that's involved in energy, ribose, and also in your DNA and RNA, ribonucleic acid, those sorts of things. And it bypasses your GI tract where it's damaged, gets into your body, and actually gets into the cell, and it's not activated until it gets into the cell. So when you think about that, it's a beautiful little package of power that does those things that orally taking a fruit juice or something like that really can't do, because antioxidants in and of themselves are somewhat confusing to people. They know it sounds important. They know it should be something that they're concerned about. But the truth of the matter is very few of them really understand the important things that Don just talked about, which is what they do in the body. So they think it's important. But it's really the function of the body to produce this master antioxidant. And the interesting thing about it is that the compounds that go into forming glutathione are deficient in the diet of humans. In order to get enough cysteine, which is the amino acid that's important, you need to add on about 2,000 calories a day by getting it from protein sources. I don't know how many gallons of asparagus you'd have to eat, but here you have it in one simple, very well constructed compound with other nutritional supplements in it that will actually help the body. It gets through the GI tract and gets into the cell, and that's why I think the things that we're doing here with Max International are very important, because in order for it to work, it has to get into the body, has to activate the enzyme, and make the compound. And we know from the scientific studies that have gone on looking at ribosine in particular, which is the active compound in Celgevity, it has a profound effect on the cellular production of glutathione. And it in many senses is self-regulating. In other words, it'd be hard to overdose on this because it's very powerful, but the body kind of regulates how much it needs to make. So for those people who don't know about glutathione, all they have to do is Google glutathione. They're going to see 90,000 hits, and they'll realize how important it is. And I think it's unfortunate that in medical school, you really don't get these sorts of things, and that we had to come outside of the, quote, establishment. But now you've got people like myself and Don, who were originally skeptics, that are particularly proud of the fact that this actually does what it should do, and it's helping a lot of people. It's very important.
Well, let's talk about your skepticism. Both of you were skeptics. As I understand it, both of you used to give, in treatments of certain conditions, intravenous glutathione because you, like every other doctor in the world, knew that you cannot take glutathione orally. I know that you can buy it,
Doesn't
but
work.
Doesn't work because it gets in the
absorbed well.
stomach, and the stomach acid actually prevents the molecule from being absorbed. So then when did you start looking into the science of ribosine and Dr. Nagasawa's science?
Well, that's an interesting question, because molecules are part of my life. I deal with them, both analyzing them and used to be synthesizing them. And so when I saw the compound, that the chemical structure, the beauty of it was immediately obvious, because here you had two compounds that were used by the body, assembled together so that they could actually get into the cells to feed the cells the cysteine molecule, which is the amino acid that's required. It actually causes the cells to make more glutathione. And you have to protect it through the GI tract. And the beauty of putting a sugar together with an amino acid and protecting it through the body to get it into the cell just made imminent sense. And so it caused me to go back to the literature and start going through it. I went through 17, I think it was, of the papers that were written about ribosine in particular, and it was extremely impressive. Some of the ones that impressed me most, besides the mouse survival when exposed to radiation, which was like 135% increase in survival with what should have been lethal radiation, were the cells treated with ionizing radiation for cancer. And when you do that, you cause collateral damage because of free radicals that are caused by the radiation. And the papers were very clear on stating that the free radical damage in the adjacent tissue was decreased, which obviously was due to the fact that it was boosting glutathione in those cells and capturing those free radicals. So this is very impressive. And so now I'm Dr. Harrington, who feels like this is a very important compound, and it's largely because of my focus on preventive interventions for patients and for individuals in general. If I can get them to boost their glutathione through this very elegant and natural means, I am totally convinced that we will do good things for people going forward.
Let's talk about that for a second. Who, in your opinion, professionally, who should be on Cellgevity?
Well, it's gotten much bigger as I've learned more about Cellgevity. I think people who are athletes, I think people who are under high stress, I think that people who are overweight, I think people who are active and want to take a preventive step. The ability to raise glutathione in cells is the key feature here, and as Don mentioned earlier, there are a number of ways you can increase it, but none so elegant or as impressive as the ribosine molecule, which relative to the original gold standard, which was N-acetylcysteine, it's at least 290 to 300% more effective than that compound, and very important.
Yes, the clinical showed a 300% improvement. One of the studies that impressed me, and people have asked me why over 27 years you've got these 20 peer-reviewed studies that have been published in medical journals and scientific journals on ribosine. Why weren't they human studies? And I asked that question of Dr. Nagasawa, and the answer he gave me was wonderful. He said, number one, you can't control the variables in a human study. You can't control the air the person breathes. You can't control what they eat. You can't control their sleep patterns. There's so many variables that can affect glutathione activity that you can't control. Whereas with the animal studies, you could put them all in the same environment. They all breathe the same air. They all eat the same diet. They all do the same amount of exercise. The only thing that changes is either they get ribosine or they don't. When they tested how it raised glutathione levels in the various tissues, and in heart cells, in 16 hours, ribosine raised the glutathione levels by 80%. And as you mentioned, the heart needs glutathione. I mean, it never stops. 24/7.
Well, there's more mitochondria in the heart muscle than any other cells in the body.
Yeah.
So it needs that glutathione more than any other cell.
And then the liver uses it for detoxification, and a liver cell has more glutathione than any other cell in the body, I've heard. And yet, even in the liver cells, it increased glutathione levels by 50%. In the muscle cells, think how we use our muscles, it increased glutathione levels by 150%. In 16 hours.
And that's why it's so good for athletes. When they optimize their glutathione levels, they're going to generally perform better.
And recover better.
And recover better, sure.
More quickly. And so you went ahead, you became a believer, obviously.
I did.
Should people that don't have any issues be on Cellgevity?
Absolutely. I mean, the idea is you want to have your body as tuned as you can. You want to put all of those things increasing your glutathione levels and all of these organs that you've mentioned, and so I often use the analogy. You know, people say, "Well, I don't feel anything," but prevention is like that. If you feel something, it's too late. Or alternatively, you may have a condition, and this could potentially help you by raising the glutathione levels. The Cellgevity compound, ribosine in it, raises it in the cells, and decreases the inflammation. I view this as akin to although I don't like the analogy entirely that it's like a vitamin, because vitamins are nowhere near as powerful. In fact, many of them need a glutathione molecule to really recycle. But if you take vitamins, you don't necessarily feel much, but you know they're doing their job. You know that you require them. And the beauty of glutathione is it's in every cell in your body. It's involved in multiple pathways through linkages to other things that go on in your body. And why would you not want to have the master antioxidant at its peak performance to protect you from the constant assault from the environment of just driving through a city, the toxins in the air, drinking water, eating sushi, the chelating compounds of it. Sushi has mercury and various other compound, metals in it. And so these sorts of things are very important. And here you have one compound that, without eating 2,000 calories additional of whey, can get this into your cells where it's needed to produce, so that your own cells produce this glutathione and protect your body and decrease your inflammation.
Now, you brought up toxicity. You once quoted, I remember at a meeting we were at in Miami, you quoted a study by the CDC on chemical toxins in the cell.
Sure.
Can you share that with me?
Well, first I'd like to tell you about the study with the EPA. The EPA found that the average American contains about 700 industrial chemicals in their body. 700? Wow. That's average, on average. And there's over 70,000 industrial chemicals in our environment, with over 1,000 chemicals being released, new chemicals every year. So that fact alone, with the toxic burden we have with chemicals, I'd want to take glutathione. But the CDC study, they analyzed the blood samples of 2,500 people for, I believe, 148 different industrial chemicals, and found significant levels of those chemicals in everyone tested. Everyone. Wow. Not just a few, but everyone tested. And so again, who needs glutathione? We just think, what causes us to lose glutathione? Well, chemicals, toxins. Also, alcohol. Alcohol drains glutathione faster than anything, almost. Certain medicines will drain glutathione, like acetaminophen. And that's why everyone taking acetaminophen should be taking our product. Anyone drinking alcohol should be taking our product, because that alcohol is converting to acetaldehyde, which damages the liver, it damages the brain, can damage the heart. And so again, that's why anyone drinking alcohol is going to want to take our product. Other things that diminish glutathione in the body are, just a toxic diet, just a regular inflammatory diet that so many Americans eat with so much sugar. Sugar's inflammatory, creates inflammatory mediators. High glycemic foods like white bread, white rice, cereals, instant potatoes. That elevates sugar, which increases inflammation. Most grains increase inflammation. Omega-6 fats increase inflammation. Trans fats, they're the most inflammatory food on the planet, just trans or hydrogenated fats. But not just a poor diet. Stress, excessive stress. Everyone's got stress. Stress drains glutathione, as well as lack of sleep, as well as aging. Drains the glutathione levels. When you drain the glutathione levels, you're draining the immune system. Because when the immune system, the white blood cells, contain adequate amounts of glutathione, they function at peak efficiency. But finally, aging. Aging drains the glutathione. So who needs it? In my opinion, if you want to excel at sports, if you want to have faster recovery with exercise, you need ribosine, okay? If you're a baby boomer and you want to slow down the aging process, another thing, glutathione promotes longevity. One of the most amazing studies was called the centenarian study. These are centenarians that lived to be over 100. And they had three groups of people. They called them, first group was 25 to 35, okay, young. And then they had the middle age. Now, the middle age confused me, because they said the middle age group was 65 to 75. I said, wait, that's old age. But no, the old age were the centenarians. But what's interesting in this study they found, it's a well-published study, they found that these centenarians generally had the glutathione levels of the 25 to 35-year-olds. Wow. So in other words, if you want to slow down the aging process and live to be over 100 but not live in a nursing home, you want to keep your glutathione levels optimized. And so with all the things that can lower glutathione, who needs to be on this product? Who needs glutathione? Well, especially the alcoholics, especially people on medication, such as acetaminophen, especially those people with chronic inflammatory diseases, chronic infectious diseases, especially those baby boomers who want to look good and feel young and have the energy they had when they were younger. And everyone with disease, chronic disease, lowers glutathione levels. So anyone with chronic disease should have their glutathione levels boosted.
Okay, now this is really interesting to me. This next point is I've gotten to know Doug. I've watched his work. I've studied what you have written about what you're doing. And I was shocked to learn that inflammation causes more, is it true or false, more heart attacks than any other factor.
It's true.
And you told me that 62% of all heart attacks are people who have 0 to 1 risk factors,
That's correct.
and their doctor would really give them a clean bill of health.
Unfortunately, that's true.
Okay,
Yeah.
now tell me a little bit about what you're doing and the tests that you've created to deal with that, or your company has done, because it's fascinating to me, and how inflammation relates to all of this.
Right. Well, you know, the interesting part of this is that this was a Stanford University spin-out. It's been 10 years of research, and what most people don't know is the most common cause of a heart attack is not narrowing of the arteries, which is what most people believe. It's actually rupture of something that's called unstable plaque or soft plaque or vulnerable plaque. It's like a pimple on the side of the artery, and if you were to do a catheterization and put media in there to try and illuminate it, you may not even see it. What happens is these plaques are formed by oxidation of lipids, of fats, the type that Don talked about, the worst kind being trans. And what happens is they go through the wall of the artery and create an inflammatory focus, which then collects more inflammatory cells, creates more inflammation, gets a little fibrous capsule over the top of it that's not quite very strong. And if that pops, it causes a blood clot almost immediately, and that's what kills people. We looked at animal models first. We looked at the way plaque forms in animal models, and we identified the pathways that are involved in that, and these are mostly inflammatory and remodeling pathways. We identified 250 proteins, and of those 250 proteins, we did a number of studies to narrow it down to the most important. There were about 32 of them, and we did some further studies in humans to identify a way to combine those molecules. There were 7 of them that were extremely powerful. They're all involved in inflammation and remodeling. And with those, we were able to identify a person's risk of having a heart attack due to the most common cause of heart attack within a 5-year window, but with enough time to actually do something about it. I've clearly made Cellgevity a part of my practice, as I know Don has too. And for a hardcore scientist like myself, that's a big admission, because I like the science behind it. I know the process behind it. I know that our mission is to identify people at risk, but then we have to do something for them, and we want to do something beyond statins, which are the kind of the standard of care right now. They have a lot of complications. They're good drugs, but the other thing that's important is that exercise is as effective as statins, or maybe even more effective in the right way that you do it. It strengthens the cap over it, decreases inflammation. But think about combining that with glutathione enhancement. Man, now you're really talking some serious preventive strategy. And so our company is devoted to that. We've developed a blood test that will help identify these people. And I want to stress also that this is not meant to replace anything that your doctor is doing right now. What it's meant to do is address the 50% of patients who have normal lipid levels, normal cholesterol, normal good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, who are currently having heart attacks.
The other thing that's so important too that we can't neglect is an anti-inflammatory diet. Exercise very important, as well as taking the ribosine, boosting the glutathione levels, but also identifying those inflammatory foods, minimizing them, taking anti-inflammatory foods to balance out the inflammatory foods, as well as cooking methods. I tell people cooking methods are so important, like frying. When you deep fry food, you create so much more inflammation, as well as grilling. When you grill food, you create a lot of heterocyclic amines, benzpyrenes, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons that create inflammation in the body.
Now, another thing we haven't talked about that I've noticed, I'm 63 years old, and I started on our first glutathione enhancement when I was 57. And I was already starting to feel run down. And it was discouraging to me because I've always had a high demand for energy. I write books at night. I create television shows in the day. I'm working with attorneys and agents of movie stars, and I hated the fact that I was losing my energy. And one of the first things I noticed on our very first product was all of a sudden, from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed, I felt great. I never felt a spike in energy, but I didn't run down like I did. Why is that? What does glutathione have to do? And especially Celgevity with ribosine, what does it have to do with energy?
Well, first of all, so many people think that if they're low in energy that they need caffeine or, some type of energy drink that I won't mention. But realize true energy, that well of energy that we have actually comes from the mitochondria, which are in every cell in the body. Fat cells only have maybe 2 or just a few mitochondria, but cardiac muscle cells may have as much as 2,500, whereas muscle cells may have a few hundred. But what's interesting is as we get older, we find that more and more people develop what we call mitochondrial dysfunction from oxidative damage to the mitochondria. So that our energy is produced in these little mitochondria. They're energy factories. The energy that is produced comes out in the form of ATP. So the more ATP we can make and the more mitochondria that are functioning at optimal function, the more ATP we're going to produce, the more energy. But it's interesting, they did a biopsy on a 90-year-old man, and they discovered that 95% of his mitochondria were dysfunctional. But they also did a muscle biopsy on a 5-year-old boy, and they found practically none of his, just a muscle biopsy, practically none of his mitochondria were dysfunctional. Why? Because young people have adequate amounts of glutathione, whereas older people, generally, they have much lower amounts. In fact, after the age of 21, we have about a 1% reduction of glutathione per year. So actually, you want to see when we start really going downhill. It's not after 30, it's after 21. But we find that when we can optimize the glutathione level inside the cell, those mitochondria start, it quenches the free radical reactions that have been built up. It detoxifies the heavy metals and chemicals that have gummed up the mitochondrial machinery that produces the energy. It restores and repairs the mitochondrial membrane so that the body is once again able to produce that tremendous well of energy.
Well, I know that, just a little fact, I remember in 2009, University of Virginia produced an 8-year study to determine when aging starts and when old age is official. And they monitored 12 markers that are related to dementia. And they said when we see those markers start to drop, that's when the aging process starts. When we see the majority of them go off a cliff, that's when you're old. And listen to this. Aging started, what we call aging, where they all started to go down, was the age of 20.
Wow.
Where 8 of the 12 fell off the cliff, they said, this is when you're officially old age. Your body in today's society in America, 27.
My goodness.
And then the rest fell off at, I think, 35, 42, and 45. But they were blown away at how soon we really start aging in this society. Now, I'm sure that wasn't the case decades ago when we were mainly an agrarian society and we didn't have all the manufacturing, we didn't have all the toxins, we didn't have all the heavy metals. Food had nutrition,
right.
The soil wasn't depleted, and yet, oddly enough, here's what really hit me, is that glutathione levels start to go down 20, 21.
Right.
And so there's that aging process.
And what's so important is when our glutathione levels get low, and this is what's so important, we can no longer effectively quench these free radical reactions. So we get increasing oxidative stress, nor can we adequately detoxify these chemicals, these heavy metals, these solvents, these toxins, these pesticides, and as well as even certain medications, as well as alcohol. So we get increased amounts of these toxins that accumulate in our bodies that create even more inflammation. We get more and more inflammation, and that's why we're seeing so much inflammatory disease. It's absolutely rampant.
Does obesity contribute to this at all?
My goodness, obesity does tremendously. The more belly fat a person has, the higher the levels of C-reactive protein. Now, C-reactive protein is an inflammatory mediator. The more belly fat a person has, generally the more inflammation they have.
I heard on the news today, they said that obesity among children has now doubled since 1970. 1 out of every 6 children in America are now obese.
Right, I heard 17% are obese in children, 34% of adults, which is epidemic.
Wow. Okay.
There's also had to be a new definition for obesity. It's called normal body weight obesity. And what it amounts to is your body weight may be comparable to what's appropriate for your age and your frame, but this belly fat is absolutely critical, because if your belt size is too big, you're collecting it in this midsection here, and that is probably more important than what we call BMI or your body mass index. And that's a new concept that we really need to pay attention to. And I'd like to come back to Don's comment about diet. My kids, my wife, my friends get tired of hearing me preach about this, but I got to support them 100% on this. Watch the cookies, watch the sugar, watch the bad fats.
And the sugary beverages, even the fruit beverages.
Oh, that's what the same thing on obesity today. It was on Fox News. This doctor said that we're training our children to like juices.
That's right.
And the juices are treated the same way a soda is.
No, they cause
same
more
types
belly
of sugar.
fat. They cause increased risk of fatty liver.
He took away my favorite, diet soda, because he said what happens, even with a diet soda, your pancreas begins to say, this is sweet. So it begins to change its reaction as if it was taking in sugar. Have you heard that?
Yes, absolutely.
And so he says it doesn't. He says initially, a diet soda may help you from putting on weight, but very quickly your pancreas begins to react to it the same way it reacts to ingesting sugar, and so you get the same result. You end up putting on the body fat.
Well, there was a study out of San Antonio that found that people who drank 2 or more diet sodas actually gained more weight than people who drank regular sodas, because that super sweetness is still causing physiological reactions like insulin spikes, which create inflammation, which cause the body to store more fat, which raises cholesterol, raises triglycerides, raises blood sugar, of course. But getting back to your belly fat or the waist size, over the last 40 years, studies have shown that the average waist size in men have gone from 35 inches to 39 inches in the last 40 years. In women, it's gone from a thin 30 inches to 37 inches. Now, ideally, our waist size should be half of our height or less.
Wow.
But that's ideal. Now they're saying if a man's waist measurement measured around the umbilicus or navel, and including the love handles, if it's 40 inches or greater, his risk of developing type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome is much greater. That's actually one of the criteria for metabolic syndrome, as well as in women, is 35 inches or greater. And again, most women now are around 37 inches. So we are seeing, and the more belly fat, the more inflammation, the more inflammation, the more disease, and it just keeps on going that way.
One thing I've heard from a number of people is that because of the increased energy they're getting from our products, and they've mentioned ATP, they've mentioned the Cellgevity, we have lost weight. And once again, our product's not a weight loss product, but the more energy you have, the more energy you're going to spend.
Absolutely right.
And one thing that I've noticed, I remember I've met a number of people that have been on our products, and they talked about before getting on our product, they felt like they lived under a dark cloud. And I just had this correlation, and I don't know if you guys would agree with it or not, that when your energy level is low, even small things can overwhelm you. But I've noticed when my energy level is high, that even if things that would normally overwhelm me don't.
That's right.
because I've got the energy to deal with it. I mean, as physicians, do you guys see that, or you? I know.
Oh, absolutely. I've got
patient-
so many things on my plate, and I know Dr. Harrington does too. But when you have adequate energy, and what I love about this is after a long day at work, I can go home and I can play with my 1- and 3-year-old grandbaby, take him to the park, and I see parents sitting there on the bench watching their kids. I'm up there climbing the slide, I'm pushing them on the swing, I'm running around the park, I'm chasing them all over the place, and because I have so much energy, and that's what I love about optimizing glutathione levels, and this is what's so good about ribosine and the Max products. By optimizing the glutathione levels, we have a well of energy that won't just last during the workday, and you won't get that, generally you won't get that lull in the mid-afternoon when everyone's tired and reaching for a soda, or reaching for, you know, a donut or a candy bar or a cup of coffee, because you've got that deep well of energy that even after, when you finish work, I go to the gym, I work out, then I go play with my grandbabies, and then at night I'll be going over studies and planning radio programs or writing out lectures and things like this. But because you just have so much more energy, you can do so much more.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, as they get older, they think, oh, I'm tired, I don't have time. You know, I just want to sit in front of the TV and just kind of veg and just use the remote control. Well, when you get on this product, you feel like a kid again.
Yeah. That, my experience, I was 57 when I first started. And for about 10 years before that, I had 2 sofas in my office. And every day I would look at them longingly for a nap. And I would call out to my secretary, hey, do I have 15 minutes? And she was so mean. She would always say, no, you've got to call in 5 minutes. No, this person's coming. And so literally in 10 or 15 years, I think I took 4, maybe 10 to 15-minute naps, but I wanted one every day.
Yeah.
And literally within a couple weeks of being on this product, that didn't happen anymore. It was just, and it blew me away. And my jet lag when I travel internationally, it used to wipe me out for 3 or 4 days. Now I feel it the first day I land, probably around 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and the next day I am fine. Of course, I'm downing our ATPs. And,
but Steve, what I found is when I go and work out or do things I haven't done in a while, my recovery rate is so rapid. I used to be sore for days after lifting weights and doing different exercises, but now I can recover and go right back the next day and work those same muscles, and I'm not sore. So that's what I found with so many patients I put on this. So many patients in their 50s. One fellow I remember saying, hey, I love playing hockey. And he says, now I'm over 50, I can't keep up with the young guys, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm so sore the day after playing hockey, I only play a couple of days a week, that I can't do it anymore. He started on the Max products. His energy came back, his endurance came back, his resiliency came back, but his ability to recuperate after exercise improved so much. He can play hockey a few days a week now and not be sore. Wow. And that's what's the beautiful thing about this product. Not only do you have the energy, but your body is able to recuperate so much faster by having optimal levels of glutathione.
Wow.
Yeah, and in fact, I found it fascinating. I have a number of weightlifters that I deal with, and they used to inject themselves with glutathione to accelerate their recovery. They don't have to do that anymore.
Wow.
In fact, a couple of them have indicated that as they're lifting weights, since they've started on Celgevity, that their capacity for exercise is about 20% greater. That's their opinion. I mean, that's their assessment, and they keep track of it. You know, the number of reps they can do or the amount of weight they can lift, and no injections, which is a good thing.
Yeah, we have a strength and conditioning coach. It used to be the strength and conditioning coach for the Seattle Seahawks. Now he's the strength and conditioning coach for the football team at Liberty University. And at 49, he didn't believe in supplements because he had never seen any difference with any supplement he had ever taken. And so he didn't have his football team on supplements. He didn't take supplements. Somebody told him about Max. He got on our supplement, and he didn't notice a difference. He said, this doesn't work. Well, he was 302 pounds of muscle. And so the person that said, hey, how much do you take? He said, well, I take a normal dosage. I do what the bottle says. And they said, well, why don't you try to double it? After all, you're 302 pounds.
That's good.
So he doubled it. And 4 weeks later, he had a meet. He had never broken more than one world record at a time. He bench presses. And the bench press record for 45 to 50-year-olds at that time was 702 pounds. So his first lift, he put 720 pounds on the thing, and he lifted. Well, you get 15 minutes to recover. If you do a second lift, lifters normally do less weight because they go all out on that first attempt. But he had him put over 740 pounds on the second lift.
20 pounds more.
He did that. 15
goodness.
minutes later, he went to 772.
Oh my goodness.
He did that. 15 minutes later, they said, Bill, you want to try again? The open record for all ages was 802 pounds. They put on 804 pounds, and he lifted it, and he set, so that's 5 world records because
my goodness, in
4
one
for
day.
his category, his age group, and then the open record. So
in
4
less than
lifts.
3 hours.
15 minutes between each lift.
That's amazing.
And he instantly ran over. He had them test him for drugs because he's always been drug-free, and that's always been very important to him. And he got the notice that, yes, he was drug-free, and he knew he was, but he wanted to have a piece of paper to prove it. But he had never had a day like that. He went from heavy lifting. Most heavy lifters, he said, lift 1 day a week, heavy. He went to lifting 4 days a week, even though his work week during football season were 80-hour weeks. And that was one of the first athlete testimonials I heard about that, but he said it's all about recovery.
It is.
You get into pro sports or you get into college sports, skill sets are pretty similar. He said the difference between winning and losing is how fast you recover. And he said this is the first thing I've ever used that I saw a change in recovery.
Well, for every athlete, I mean, be it high school, college, professional, having that ability to recover and having that, that is critical for performing well. And so, again, I tell all my athletes, patients that I see, that they definitely need to be on the Max products in order to promote faster recovery after exercise.
Speaking about energy, I've noticed that in the last few years, I've heard phenomenal numbers that before a few years ago, there was no such thing as energy drinks. Now today, there's energy drinks that come in bottles, there's energy drinks that come in cans, there's big ones, there's little ones, and I've heard it's a multi-billion-dollar industry almost overnight. What's the difference between creating energy using ribosine and these current energy drinks? And I asked that of both of you.
Well, again, with ribosine, what you're doing is you're working primarily at the cellular level. By optimizing mitochondrial function, your mitochondria are going to produce adequate amounts of ATP, which is going to produce that deep well of energy. That's not going to be temporary. It's not going to have a window, like a 5-hour window or a 4-hour window, but it's going to be throughout the day. Now, the problem with energy drinks that we see, first of all, so much caffeine. A little caffeine's okay, but again, caffeine can cause excessive diuresis, dehydration, and when they're playing sports, when these kids start to dehydrate, they will not perform optimally, and their performance is going to suffer as a result. The other thing we find is when so many of these kids get on these energy drinks and they're kind of addicted to them, if they don't have them, they're exhausted. And for those, it actually taxes the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are very important. The adrenal glands are important in helping also with energy. But when you literally are stepping on the accelerator throughout the day, which these energy drinks do, they really stress the adrenals, you will eventually run out of energy. And you'll, so that eventually, even if you take these energy drinks, you will not have the energy. The other thing concerning is their effects on the heart. It can speed the heart up. It can possibly trigger an arrhythmia. It can possibly trigger high blood pressure. And it can interfere with sleep. And a lot of these kids it keeps them so wired, especially for night games, that literally they can't sleep well, impairs their sleep, they wake up exhausted. Then they have to have one upon awakening in the morning. But the thing that concerns me even more are these drinks generally are very acidic to the body. And when you take these drinks and you're dependent on it, it literally cannibalizes the bones, the enamel of the teeth. They start to lose their enamel. They start to develop cavities. They actually, if they're taking tremendous amounts of these, even young girls start to develop early osteopenia or bone loss. See? So again, these is so much better to use a supplement such as ribosine, such as the Max products that literally work at the cellular level and enabling the mitochondria to produce adequate amounts of ATP. We're optimizing our body's ability to produce that deep well of energy instead of depending upon these drinks that give you energy for just a narrow window, that the other side effects literally cancel out most of the benefits of it.
What are your thoughts, Dr. Howard?
Well, I completely echo those thoughts, but I have a few additional, and the ones that disturb me are not the little drinks that are, you know, for a certain time period, but it's the large cans. And my oldest son plays in a rock band, and they tend to have those hanging around. And what I said, give me the can, let me look at it. And I said, do you know how many calories are in this can? And do you know what this is doing with all that sugar? And he goes, well, there aren't that many calories. And I said, well, why do you say that? How many servings are in here? 2.5 servings per can.
Oh, wow.
You multiply that times 90 calories, and you know, you're in and the problem with it is it's pure sugar. I don't care what they call it, it's pure sugar. What it does is it causes a blood sugar spike. The body tries to compensate for that, secretes insulin. The blood sugar comes crashing down, and suddenly they're hungry, and they're looking for energy, and it's just a really bad cycle to get in. And I want to echo the acid part of it. It can really not just damage your bones, but it can etch your teeth and cause decay along with the sugar. And then there's the issue of how much they take. You know, the amount of vitamins and minerals can become toxic if they drink a lot of them. And so I'm adamantly opposed to these things, but I'm certainly not as good a marketeer as these companies are. And they really have done a magnificent job of inserting themselves into the habits of our kids. But I think we owe it to them to talk about a better way to do this is to do exactly what we've been talking about, which is to get the right compounds into the body and let the body do what it does best. And that is, you know, we talk about the Max ATP product, for instance. ATP says it all. That's the energy currency of the cell. And here you have a balanced compound that includes ribosine and certain vitamins involved in those pathways, and it will definitely help the mitochondria do their job. And you know, when you talk about putting something into your body, you don't want to be putting a pure sugar load that's very inflammatory. You want to be putting things in that are going to help your cells behave better, make your body function much better. And so I will continue my crusade, because it also is damaging to the heart potentially. You know, these compounds, the sugar high, the risk of diabetes, all of these things have a consequence.
Now, tell me your experience, either one of you, with ATP, our little energy drink.
Well, first of all, what I love about the ATP, and I put a cyclist on this, it's amazing. This one cyclist is training with professional cyclists, and he would literally cycle over 100 miles a day over the weekend. And we put him on this for a month, and then just a few days before he was about to run out, he says, you got to send me more of this. He says, my endurance is off the chart, my energy. He says, my recuperability, I'm able to recover so much faster. He says, I've got to have it. FedEx it to me right away. Now, what we find in this product, not only does it have the ribosine, but it has the rhodiola. Now, rhodiola is a powerful adaptogen that helps with, studies have shown that it helps endurance significantly, especially in cyclists, people who, you know, ride bicycles, but also other endurance athletes. So again, and also it has some vitamins in it too, which is very helpful. So again, this is working on the cellular level by enabling the mitochondria to produce adequate amounts of ATP, optimizing that ATP so that the person can get that deep well of energy that's not going to last just a narrow window, but it's going to last for many hours throughout the day and evening. But again, the neat thing about this product is it doesn't keep you wired like these energy drinks.
Yes.
Those energy drinks impair sleep. This product enables you to enter into that deep sleep, and that's what my patients just are amazed at. Because when they go to bed at night, they say, I have all this energy during the day, but when I go to sleep at night, I enter into the deepest, most refreshing sleep, because that's what happens when you literally, this product works on the cellular level, but it also works in the brain, and it balances. Well, it helps to bring the glutathione levels in the brain up, which, again, it helps to balance those neurotransmitters in the brain, which enables one to enter into that deep sleep.
And Dr. Nagasawa says it's demand release. So when your body's demanding it, it releases. When you want to sleep, you're not demanding a lot of energy.
That's right.
And I literally can take if I have to write a chapter in a book, and I'm going to write it between 11 and 1 in the morning, I'll take an ATP around 10 o'clock. I have all the energy I need. The moment I'm done writing, I lay go in, lay my head on a pillow, and literally within 2 to 3 minutes, I'm asleep. And I go into that
amazing.
level of sleep at 63,
Yeah.
a deep sleep where I can
Right.
recall my dreams. I mean, it is crazy. I can remember my dreams now, and I used those days had long gone by. But we have a 56-year-old cyclist who says he's been cycling competitively for 18 years. He's a doctor in Florida, and he says he is now winning against cyclists that are half his age, and they all think he's on a performance enhancer.
Right.
And he says, well, I am, because ATP is your body's natural performance enhancer.
That's right.
And so as is some of the other components in that. So we're seeing a lot of that. We have world champion boxers, a lot of professional athletes are on it now. A number of athletes tell me they won't even think of a competition, going into a competition without it. Marathoners, Ironmen, we have a man competing in Hawaii in the Ironman. Never imagined he would be at that level at 40, in his 40s, and yet he is, because, and he takes Celgevity and ATP before the event. In fact, he takes it, he told me he takes it right after he does the 2 miles, he takes it before the event, does his 2-mile swim, then he does the 116-mile bike ride, and then he takes it before he starts the 26-mile marathon. And he said he can't even imagine doing an event without it now.
Well, when you do an Ironman competition or just any marathon or any race, again, you are creating so much oxidative stress to those mitochondria. There's so much, free radicals, hydrogen peroxide, singlet oxygen, and all these that have to be quenched in order for that mitochondria to produce ATP. So he's smart by taking this, because he's literally quenching all those free radicals, and he's optimizing the ability of the mitochondria to produce ATP. It's brilliant what he's doing.
When my family found out that I was going to start, taking this stuff, and I've been using it, they were living in fear, because, you don't sleep much now. What are you going to do? But I had the same experience you did, which is I actually sleep better, and it's more restful. But the other chuckle I have is that, we have 6 kids, and we have all these employees, and they're a lot younger than I am, and we usually leave them in our wake, and they're trying to figure out what it is that we're doing that's different from them, because they're in their teens and 20s. And my wife and I are basically out activitying them everywhere we go. They're falling behind us. And a lot of them were skeptics until we said, well, what we're doing is we're just taking a very simple nutritional compound, and you should try it, see what happens, and maybe you'll be able to keep up with us, you know what I mean? And so I've gotten some of my skeptical scientists in the company, because they're all hardcore, they're worse than I am. This was at a make or break time for the company. We had a study that we needed to get analyzed. And my poor biostatistician could not sleep. He was just having a very difficult time, and I put him on, I tried a sleeping pill for 2 weeks. And he was just not getting things done. He was getting more frustrated. And so at that time, I put him on Celgevity, and I made no promises to him. But I have to tell you that within a week, we had the study results done. He's still taking it. He swears by it now. And I am absolutely certain that he's talking to the rest of his family members and other friends about what this was. Because it's interesting that these sleeping pills give you a false sense of getting some sort of relief, but they're really not giving you the type of sleep that you were talking about and that Don was talking about. It's very important to do it the right way, which is let the body do its own thing, and that's what Celgevity helps it do. Celgevity helps it do.
I will tell you, since I've been on Celgevity, the sleep has been so deep and so quickly to get asleep that I'm dreaming, and I'll still occasionally, there'll be a noise that'll wake me up or something, but most of the time, I'm sleeping right through the night, and it's been wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I think this is awesome. Both of you are on our medical advisory board, for which we are so grateful that people of your caliber, of your intellect, of your science background, people who deal with real patients on a daily basis, people that you in research, the kind of research you're doing, and along with your associates, and to have your advice, to have some of the things that you guys have suggested about future products and about future testing and future clinicals and studies and so on, I just feel like as a company, we're blessed beyond imagination to have you as part of our team. So I want to thank you personally on behalf of Stephen Shannon Scott. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.